Hello everybody, this is Alex, and in this video I'm going to be offering an overview of the trading setup that I'll be using for the foreseeable future. Now, before I begin, I do want to point out that this cost breakdown does not include living expenses such as rent, such as internet, and all kinds of bills surrounding my general living cost. That is going to be covered in another video. And so in this video, all we're looking at is the hardware and the software that I'm using in order to trade. Now I'm going to start by listing all the products, services, and tools that make up my setup. And once that's done, I'll break down all the costs of each item that I described. And then after that, I'm going to break down the software that I'll be using and some of the tools that I built myself, which you'll see in subsequent recaps. So the PC that I'm using right now is a Lenovo Legion Y520 gaming desktop. Now, I won't spend too much time going through the exact specs. I will leave those in the description of the video. So if you want the exact specs of my tower, you can look at the description and they will be listed there. Now, apart from the tower, I have a Lenovo 22-inch LCD 2K monitor, and I only have one monitor. Now, along with the monitor and the tower, I do have, a bunch of generic other things. I don't spend a lot of money on the keyboard and mouse. I have 4 or 5 replacement keyboards ready to go at a moment's notice because keyboards, of course, with using hotkeys, it's very important to have a keyboard that functions properly. If a drink gets spilled on my keyboard or something, I tend to replace it right away. I don't normally take chances. Now, typically, I'm only spending $15, $20 on a keyboard. In this case, I'm actually still using the one that I got with the tower. Now, the other piece of hardware that I do have that isn't absolutely critical to trading, but because I do use it frequently, I will list it. And that's the Blue Yeti microphone. Now, in terms of trading software, I'm using DAS Trader, and I'm using the basic version of DAS Trader, which is the cheapest version that they sell. And at present, I'm operating on a 3-month subscription, which started in mid-early September and will end on December 6th. Now, in addition to the trading software, I also have 2 pieces of management software. The first is Microsoft Office. I use Word and I use Excel in order to manage the information related to my trades. In addition to that, I also use Movavi Screen Capture Studio 9, and that's so that I can make the recaps, which allow me to analyze my trades each day. And this is a process that replaces part of the written recap that I would normally make if I didn't have the screen recorder that I use to make my recaps. And I'll talk more about that later. So now here's a look at the cost overview of what I spent on my setup. And while you look at this, I will point out that these costs represent what I actually spent on my setup. But it's important to note that they do not necessarily represent the whole reality, nor do they represent what you would necessarily need to spend. There are many indirect expenses to consider here as well. For example, in order to spend 5 days a week focusing on proving your own profitability in trading, you may not be able to maintain the same work schedule you normally would, which could lead to a loss of income, which on its own is an indirect expense. I'm also going to point out that none of this has taken into account the immense amount of time and energy that I had to spend just to get moderately competent with trading in the first place. However, because that topic is such a big one, it will be covered slowly throughout subsequent videos instead of having its own time slot in this one. So now that you're acquainted with the costs of my hardware and software, let's take a closer look at the software that I'll be using to trade and which will be showing up in subsequent videos. So what we're going to start off with is DAS Trader. And even though you may be familiar with a lot of these already and a lot of the windows are self-explanatory, I'm going to run through every one of them anyway, just to make sure you at least understand what it is you're seeing when I bring these windows up in my recaps. Now, as you can see in the bottom left-hand corner, I have 4 different tabs in my DAS Trader platform. The first and the last one, labeled Scanning and Recap, those ones we're not going to look at because I don't really use them anymore. For the recaps, I typically just use the trading screen, and the scanners, that screen is left over from my SureTrader account where I actually used to use the scanners. In this case in DAS Trader, I do not use the scanners. I use the Velocity chat room instead because they have way better scanners than DAS Trader. So on my main screen, labeled Trading, we're going to start by looking at the charts. Now I use a 1 minute, a 5 minute, and a 1 day chart. On the 1 minute and on the 5 minute, I use a single indicator, which is the VWAP, the volume weighted average price. And that's shown as the orange dotted line. On my one-day chart, I use two indicators. The purple line is the 200 simple moving average, and the light blue line is the 100 simple moving average. Now at the top in the middle, we have the high-low hit list. Now this window gives me the names of stocks that are hitting either the low of day or the high of day. Just below that, we have the orders window. This is a window that shows me all the orders I have pending in the market. And just below the orders window, we have the positions window. This will show me all the positions which are currently open. Now just to the right of that, we have the closed positions window. This is going to list all the stocks that I traded in a particular day. Right below that, we have the time in sales, which is also known as the tape. This will show me every single order that goes through the market. In this window, I have three pieces of information: the price, the quantity of shares, and the time. Now, an important note is that I have this set to show me exactly the number of shares going through. These are not multiples of 100. These are exact numbers of shares. Now, in the middle at the bottom, we have the most important window, which is the montage. This is a combination of a few things, including my order entry window and my level 2. This is where I get all the information about orders that are currently listed in the market and which are not hidden. It's also what I can use to place orders if ever my hotkeys do not fit my particular strategy. Now, over to the right, overlapping my one-day chart, is my watch list. This is something I refresh every day. The only symbol with a permanent home on this list is the SPY, which is an index showing me the strength of the S&P 500. Just above that, we have the clock. Now, I frequently hide the clock in my recaps so that you guys can't get a read on how bad I am at talking. So in live videos, this will be visible, but in recaps, it will often be minimized. Now, to the right of the clock, we have my account information. This will show my equity, my buying power. It'll give me a couple of fees, as well as the commissions, my realized profit, and then my net P&L. Above that, we have the NASDAQ Top 20 and the New York Stock Exchange Top 20. These are lists of gainers throughout each individual day, which will show me the top stocks within those respective markets. On the right-hand side at the top, we have my trades window. And this window will show me every single order which has been executed within a particular day. Now, besides my main trading screen, which is by far where I spend the most of my time, I do also have the watching screen. And that one is used mainly right at the bell when I have several stocks on my watch list which I think have potential, but I'm not 100% sure which one to look at. Now, if I had multiple monitors and if I had independent charting software, I would not need this tab because I would have charts on my other screens and I would keep my main trading window in the middle. However, because I'm using a single monitor system in this case, I do have to have a separate window in order to look at multiple stocks at the same time. And in this case, you can see I have 4 different level 2s, 4 different tapes, and 4 different charts. Now, typically, you're not going to be seeing this anytime in my recaps. This is something that remains hidden, and the only time you're going to see it is if I make a live video that captures the first few minutes of the market. But I do think it's important for me to show you this because it's something that goes on behind the scenes, and it's relevant to the way that I manage the information that I can get from my broker. So now that we've covered my broker, we're going to be taking a look at the tools that I made myself using Microsoft Excel, which I use to track my progress in any given account. Now I'm going to be keeping this one pretty brief. I won't be explaining any of the formulas that are behind this tracker, nor my trade log. However, there are a few things that I want to point out that are pretty important for you to understand as a viewer. So the one we're looking at right now is my daily results log. At the bottom left, you can see I have multiple tabs that allow me to track my results over a variety of different time frames. In this case, I have the tab September selected, which is only going to show me the active days from September. Now, the first thing I want to explain about this, in both this one and my trade results, you'll notice that the titles are either colored yellow or they're colored black. Now, in the yellow titles, as seen here and a couple other spots, this means that it's something I'm typing in myself, and on the daily results, I simply copy all of this stuff from the information that I get on my broker screen. Now for the black titles, as seen with gross ROE, net P&L, net ROE, etc., these indicate that there are formulas at work that produce these numbers for me. I don't actually type in anything into these columns. They are simply a representation of all the other information which I've plugged in myself. Now, by this point, you surely noticed that the box over here under the balance column is backgrounded in yellow. And what that means is that there was a transaction that took place between my balance and my bank. So this indicates either a withdrawal or a deposit into the account. In this case, it's my initial deposit of $2,000 to launch the account. Now up top you can see that I have a variety of stats listed which are automatically calculated based on formulas that I have plugged in. Now a lot of these are self-explanatory and so I won't be going into them automatically. If you need further explanation on this, just ask whatever your question is in the comments section and I'll be sure to go back and answer it. And if there are enough people who are confused by a particular stat, I will go further into depth and make a separate video to explain each and every one of these. But to go over it real quickly, I'll just point out that ROE stands for return on equity. This is simply my daily result divided by the balance that I started with at the beginning of the day. Now you can see in this stats window here, I have two different sections. One side is for average, the other side is for total. Now the green and the red columns, those obviously represent the green days and the red days. The gray one is a combination of the two. So on the total side, it's the two added up. On the average side, it's the two added up divided by the total number of active days. Now over here on the right in the best result and worst result section, I will point out that these are not necessarily going to be all stats from the same day in each column. Each of these four pieces of information stand alone. And I will open up the formula so you can see here. It's simply going to be the largest out of this particular column for gross P&L, and the same thing holds true for all the others. If I open up the formula again for net P&L, you will see what I mean by that. Now, the last thing I want to say about my daily log is just a quick definition of the offset column right here. This calculates the difference of my projected closing balance from my opening balance the next day. And the main use of this column is to show me when transactions have taken place in the account, such as add-ons that come from my bank, withdrawals which go to my bank from my balance, and most commonly this is going to show the account fees which are charged on the 4th of each month. And in this simulator, they will be $124 per month. So now we're going to look at my trade log, which as you can see is very similar to my daily results. They're both structured in almost exactly the same fashion. A lot of the things, for instance, about the titles that I said in the last one, those also hold true here. Same thing with the average side versus the total side. That's all the same. Best and worst result, that's all the same as well. But probably the most important note about this one is that I'm using a very old version of this. I've gone through, I think, about a dozen incarnations of both of these trackers. And in this one, I'm using a fairly old one, which has a lot less developed stats at the top. In my most recent versions, I have stats filling this entire area here. And I've decided to omit that for the use in this simulator. Now, a few notes about the stats up top in the other section. The gross P&L ratio right here, well, the gross P&L and the net P&L, those are comparing the gross P&L on the total side here. The best and worst ROI ratio, that is using the percentages here and the percent right here. So I've opened the formula here so that you can see what's going on. It's dividing my largest winner into the inverse of my largest loser. Another note about the average commissions per share. These are the commissions for both in and out of a particular trade. It's not just on one side. So in reality, these average commissions per share, these are actually half. Now I choose to display them for the entire position so that I can get a better feel for how much money is coming off of each trade. So you may have noticed that I only have one price listed for entry and for exit, despite the fact that on this particular trade right here, I had 4 entries and 4 exits. And so the method I use to get these average entries and average exits is my entry and exit calculator. So I've minimized my trades window in order to show you my entry and exit calculator on the right hand side here. So right here I've just typed in some information to show you what it might look like if I were to have 3 entries and 1 exit on a winning trade going from 159 to 180. And what this does is it gives me this pile of information up top, which is all based on formulas. And these numbers up top are what I plug into my trade log. Now, an important note about the trade log is that it's not perfectly accurate. Because I round off each price to the 4th decimal point, there will be some slippage that squeaks by and makes these results inaccurate by a very slight margin over a large period of time. That's very much unlike my daily results, which are copied directly from my broker. So even though some rounding does occur on my daily results, this will be automatically corrected by the DASTrader software and will be shown in that offset column in my daily results, which I just showed you. So that's going to be a wrap for this video, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the overview that I provided. And once again, if you do have any questions about anything I explained in this video, don't be shy, write me in the comments, and I'll be sure to go back and answer as best I can. And like I said earlier as well, if there are a lot of people who fail to understand a particular component of my trackers, or basically any part of what I just explained, I will make additional videos in the long run. The reason I didn't do it right here, and the reason I'm not going to do it until it's asked for, is that I have too many things to get to that are far more important before I get to that kind of stuff. So until next time, guys, this is Alex saying happy trading.